Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of System Update. This episode is going to be a bit different. We're going to be talking about one topic for 30 minutes because it took me forever to talk about it. We're going to split the other two throughout the week, so let's jump right into it. Bethesda kicked off E3 with a massive conference, showing off a span of games, starting off with Doom 4. They're not calling it Doom 4, they're just calling it Doom, which looks very cool and very chaotic. They're kind of going back to the whole, shoot everything inside, everything that moves is filled with blood and you have to shoot it and chainsaw it. They're bringing back the chainsaw and double barrel shotgun for all you classic Doom fans out there. They showed off some multiplayer gameplay, which looks, it looks like Halo, but with Doom weapons. It seems like it can be good, but I feel like it's not interesting enough. Though the only thing really I found particularly special about the Doom multiplayer was the ability to collect a power-up which turns you into a demon. You collect this little pentagram and you become a demon. You can just fly around the map and beat people up with your demon powers. It looked really cool, but like I said, it seems like, that's the only real mechanic that's going to make the Doom multiplayer special, and I don't think that's going to make it special for long. They showed off a bit of single-player Doom also, where you enter the gates of hell, then you start fighting demons in a big arena-like area of hell, which looked very cool. I noticed, though, not a big variety of enemies there. There were like, I think 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4 types of enemies there. They were all interesting, I should say. There were these they had like the fast and skinny guys who just run up and hit you, and they had the big tank guys with, hell guns on their shoulders just firing at you. And then they ended it off with, like, basically, probably Satan coming up and being like, "Rawr, I'm basically Satan." Like I said, though, those were, like, the only enemies there. However, they did have a massive collection of guns. They had this whole weapon wheel that had a bunch of fun little guns that you can mess around with. So, looking forward to Doom, but that's not all. They also had this snap map tool. Snap map is what they're calling it. That's what I said. It's basically an easy modding tool, so you can mod regardless of console or PC, and modding's always been a thing specifically for PC people. You can mod on the consoles, but it's technically illegal, so don't do that. Basically, you get to make your own Doom maps, and, just a map maker is pretty simple. That's in a lot of games. But you can also, like, make your own game modes. You could, change game logic as they worded it to where, they showed off a game mode made with Snap Map, which was like Call of Duty Zombies, where you kill monsters, get points, and then use those points to buy weapons. Or they showed off one that was like, this is like 2v2 multiplayer battles made with Snap Map. And they also showed off this thing where, you could link this body of armor, so when you pick up this armor suit, a big demon guy appears in front of you. It seems interesting. It seems fun. It seems like you can really mess around with it if you take time and just make your own little Doom experience, and I think it's interesting. So let's move on to the next game. They showed off a beta sign-up for Battlecry from Battlecry Studios. Their next big multiplayer competitive game, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I think the game looks bad. Let's start off graphically. It looks not that good. The textures look bland and, unworked on. It kind of seems like they were going for a Team Fortress 2 style art direction, but it doesn't work, and it looks it looks, bland. Um, the gameplay itself looks boring. They had this scene, they showed off a little thing, which we'll probably see in the video here, this girl, attacking this other player for, 20 seconds, then that guy dies, and she goes and attacks another player for, 20 seconds, and it doesn't seem fun, and even when they kind of cut to, it seemed like it was supposed to be, a chaos montage, even then, it seemed like, this does not look that great. It looks boring. It looks like a game I'm not totally interested in. But in case you are interested in it, they announced a sign up for the beta. I think they said somewhere it was going to be released next year. And I think they had it at Bethesda's E3 last year too. And I was listening to some discussions about the Bethesda panel, and most of them also said the hype for Battlecry wasn't that hyped. It doesn't look good, in my opinion. However, if you are interested in that type of game, like I said, they have the beta sign up. So let's move on to the next game. Everyone saw this coming. Dishonored 2 will be coming out. Of course, Dishonored was a huge success on Bethesda's part. I own the game, never played it. I played an hour of it, and it was pretty fun, but I had to go, and I never just got back to the game. So Dishonored 2, looking pretty good. It looks like Dishonored 1 so far, but now you can play with other characters, and these other characters have their own sort of unique powers and abilities. That's sort of something they stressed during the announcement. They also announced Dishonored Definitive Edition. Of course, it has to have a Definitive Edition. I'm gonna go on a little discussion about Definitive Editions of games. I think a game shouldn't get a remastering until it's at least 10 years old, because it seems that most developers are they're releasing a bunch of DLC for a game, then they're a few months after releasing all their DLC, they go and release a definitive edition which comes with all the DLC for the price of the base game, which you probably bought 4 months ago. I think developers need to stop doing this. I understand that it gets people to play your game again and buy it again, except this time you can play it, with the next-gen graphics, but to be completely honest, the next-gen graphics aren't too terribly different from the last-gen graphics. I mean, it's not even next-gen at this point, it's just gen. I think definitive editions can be good. Recently Nintendo released Wind Waker HD, and that was a nice little HD remastering, because that game was 10 years. I believe it was actually 10 years old at that point. Dishonored came out in 2013. It's still new in my opinion. I could probably go to GameStop right now and still get a new packaged copy of Dishonored. I don't need a definitive edition. I don't need an HD remastering of a game that's already basically HD. Point is, I want developers to stop with the HD remasterings, because there are games that are worthy of HD remasterings, and there are games which came out 2 years ago. However, it doesn't mean I'm not excited for Dishonored 2. Like I said, I didn't play a lot of Dishonored 1, but the part I did play was a blast. You just warp around using your powers and stab people, which is, what else can you do that's that fun in a video game other than fly around and stab people? It's great. You didn't actually fly in that game, but you did go around and stab people. Point is, Dishonored 2 is coming out. So is Dishonored Definitive Edition for some odd reason. Let's move on to the next game. They talked a little bit about Elder Scrolls Online, the recent console release. I haven't gotten my chance to play this game, but I've heard it is not very good. It was released on PC a year ago, and that was a very flawed version from what I've heard. But it might have gotten better. They might have fixed the major issues that the PC version had over this last year in getting ready for the console version. But if not, it's just, the same crappy game, except now you can play with a gamepad and on your Xbox. I'm not sure if it's good. I'm not sure if they fixed the problems. From what I've heard, it's better, but it's still not, still not really a good game. Although, according to them, they are working on, supporting the recent release and continuing on with, expanding the game and putting new stuff in there. So it might get better. I don't personally think so. They also showed off their brand new iOS and PC. I think they said PC. Might not have been. But iOS strategy card game, Elder Scrolls Legends. Who asked for this? Quick question. Who thought Elder Scrolls needed a card game? I guess they saw Blizzard doing it with Warcraft when they made Hearthstone, and they thought, we can do that. It's simple. According to them, it's gonna have some of the most popular characters in the Elder Scrolls series and some of the, popular races in the Elder Scrolls series, but I cannot name a single, character from any of the Elder Scrolls games. Granted, I've only played Oblivion and Skyrim, but even from those two games, characters are not really that memorable. I was never I like this guy. I was when I played it, but after I played the game, I was I didn't remember any of them. I was who is the dragon guy? Alduin, that's probably the only name I can remember, if that's even his name. So, I don't know exactly what they mean by popular characters, because none of them are memorable in my opinion. I think that this is, like I said, no one asked for this. No one thought Elder Scrolls and thought strategy card game. But what does need to be an iOS card game? Gwent. If you've played Witcher 3, the Gwent card game, I want that on my phone, my iPad, and my computer, and I want my life to be Gwent. That is the funnest thing ever. However, I'm not too terribly interested in having my life be Elder Scrolls Legends. They actually did a little funny, Bethesda did a little funny tease where they teased ending the show before talking about the biggest game, the reason that theater was probably filled with people, that place was flooding with people. This is probably the reason why Fallout 4, this game is probably the biggest game of 2015, and it's actually coming out in 2015, but we'll talk more on that after we talk about another iOS game, one that's actually somewhat good, Fallout Shelter. Fallout Shelter is a free-to-play iOS game where you get to be the overseer of your own vault. This vault, you can number this vault whatever you want. It could be Vault 123, it can be Vault 420, it could be Vaults 111 or 101. It's really fun. It's a neat little time waster, and I'm very happy to say, there's no pay-to-play mechanics. Not stupid Clash of Clans, which is, people think that's a good game for some reason, where, if you don't buy a certain amount of emeralds for a certain amount of real money, you have to wait 4 weeks in order to, build up whatever the heck, build a wall, or whatever. There is a pay, you can pay for certain things, but there's no, it's not required at all. You can get by perfectly fine without buying these things. Basically, you have to micromanage specific parts of the vault. You have to assign vault members to certain jobs. You have to keep track of water supply, food supply, and energy supply. So, like, if energy supply goes out, then certain buildings will not have power and they can't function. If you run out of food, people will start, losing health. If you don't have clean water, then people are going to start getting radiation poisoning. It's not very complicated, but it is very hard. My vault lasted like 4 days. It was not pretty. Anyway, it's a neat little time waster. And what I was saying about the pay-to-play mechanics is you get these little lunch boxes every so often for completing certain objectives, and you open these lunch boxes and they have little goodies inside of them. They have, I don't know, maybe some caps or water or food or energy, something like that. Like I said, you can pay for these. You can buy these lunch boxes, but it's not required at all. You can just live perfectly fine without buying these. I love it. I love that Bethesda isn't forcing down, buy these emeralds, buy these gems. I'm glad they're not shoving that down our throats. Really nice. You can basically at the end of every day, you get a rating from your vault members, and by the end of day, I mean end of an actual day. One day they'll give you a B. You got a B for being a good overseer. One day they'll be like, you got an F because raiders invaded and you let that happen. Yeah, raiders can invade. Rad roaches can infest. Fires can just miraculously start. It's not a fun time for anybody. But it is a fun time for the person playing the game. Every vault member has their own special stats, and that's not just, the word special, like SPECIAL special. And depending on what their highest stat is, you have to hire them to specific jobs. Like if they have a good charisma, you have to hire them towards the radio station or the restaurant. If they have good intelligence, you have to hire them in the med bay or the laboratory. The game's very fun. It's a neat little time waster. You don't need to have any sort of connection, internet or Wi-Fi connection. You can just play it whenever you want, and I love that because there's a lot of games like Fallout Shelter where you do have to have an internet connection. I'm just like, why? It doesn't even have to do with any Wi-Fi or anything. And one last note I'd like to make is the game looks beautiful. It's little cartoony Fallout graphics. Everything just looks cartoony and fun and beautiful. And you can send people into the wasteland to go collect your stuff. And you can have babies. You can have 2 people make babies and you get to name the baby. One of them's last name just so happened to be Cox, and I named it Jesse Cox, for any of you guys who get that reference. I think it's high time we move on to the biggest game of possibly the biggest game of E3, Fallout 4. Fallout 4, probably the reason that whole theater was packed. The game is looking pretty dang good. I'm liking it so far. I've noticed some changes, and they showed off a lot of the major changes because they really wanted you to know that this wasn't just Fallout 3 with, current gen graphics. They showed off a lot of things. First of all, the current gen graphics looking beautiful. The wasteland has never been so majestic, so to speak. Your character has a voice now. That was something that wasn't likely in the first games. You would get dialogue options, but your character now has a legitimate voice. Like, he actually talks now. the dialogue options are a bit different now. Now your specific options for dialogue are now hooked up to your ABXY or whatever controller or keyboard you're using, instead of being presented a list of possible things you could say. Now it's linked up to the buttons on your controller or keyboard. A bit different, maybe not a major difference, but it's a difference. The game actually starts out not in the wasteland or in a vault, but it starts out just, in a normal house before the apocalypse. Then the fallout happens, and you have to make your way to a vault. Then vault stuff happens. They didn't show off anything in the vault. The only thing they showed off in the vault was getting your Pip-Boy. But for the most part, they ignored that because they didn't want any story spoilers. They wanted the game to be completely fresh when you started playing it. One thing I noticed, and he actually made note about this, they've recorded, there's a robot in the game, and they've recorded 1,000 of the most common names, so they say, that robot will say. So the guy put in the name Howard as his character, and the robot said, "Mr. Howard, blah, 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 I'm a robot." Which I think is really cool. I think it's really cool when things actually say your name. So if you have a name like John, right, the robot is going to respond. But these are the common names, so if your name is Smeef or Snabaluber, your name's probably not going to be on that list. Unless Snabaluber's a common name somewhere in the world. So you get to the wasteland after collecting the Pip-Boy. You make your way up to the vault, out of the vaults, into the wasteland, and the wasteland has never looked more beautiful. It's so cool. The current gen graphics really complement it. The lighting and shading effects are just really beautiful, just beautiful. You meet this dog. Of course, it's got a dog. I think that's a video game requirement at this point. Call of Duty Ghost, Mad Max. I should not have spoke of Call of Duty Ghost. That game does not deserve speaking of. And just all these other games have dogs in it now. Same German Shepherd. And this is your little dog companion, your little dog buddy. They showed this off in the teaser trailer. They showed the dog running around the house. So this dog leads you to a garage where they start showing off some of the major differences in the game. For instance, the weapon building is now completely different. It's not just, you build a regular weapon. Now you can customize your own weapon. It's looking sort of like Dead Space 3, if you guys remember that, where, once again, you build your own weapons. They also showed off a settlement builder where you get to build your own settlement, and you can have people come and raiders will attack, and you just have to manage it all. Sort of like Fallout Shelter for the iOS, which I talked about minutes ago. Quinkadink. They showed off some of the combat. The combat looks like Fallout 3, but more chaotic, I guess so to say. They showed it off in a way that really looked like, things were happening everywhere. There were a bunch of explosions and a bunch of things happening. It still looked like Fallout, just a bit more chaotic version of Fallout. In fact, it kind of looked like Dead Rising 3 in a way, because they were showing off these crazy costumes you could wear that looked dumb. He was wearing a dress at one point and the dog was like, "Nope, that doesn't work for you." Speaking of which, the dog can do stuff for you. If you point at something and you say "retrieve that," it'll go retrieve that and, do your bidding, do whatever you want it to. So far, the game's looking pretty good. I'm pretty excited for it. I didn't like Fallout 3 when I first played it, but recently I went back and actually played it, and I beat it, in a day. Just a 12, 13 hour binge day of playing Fallout 3. I love that game now. So I'm really looking forward to Fallout 4. Also, if you're a collector, there is a collector's edition that comes with a real-life Pip-Boy, which you can link up to your system and you can do Pip-Boy stuff on your own Pip-Boy, which is on your own arm. And in case you don't actually have the Pip-Boy, there is a Pip-Boy app for your phone that will be coming out alongside Fallout 4, so that you can do that Pip-Boy stuff even if you don't have the Pip-Boy. So I didn't realize that Bethesda discussion was going to last 25 minutes. And I decided that, having an hour and a half long video probably wasn't the best idea. Because if I want to cover 2 other topics, it's gonna take a while. Like this is one topic. It took me almost half an hour. So I decided next week, instead of just having my schedule of just Monday every week for system update, it's going to be, at least just for this week, it's only going to be E3, or not just E3, but there's going to be 3 videos that week. System update, episode 2, part 1, 2, and 3. This is obviously part 1. The Wednesday there will be part 2, and Friday there will be part 3. That's how I'm going to cover 3 topics this week. I'm not just gonna, cover one thing. It's gonna be broken up into 3 videos. After this, it'll go back to the normal Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time every week. Every Monday, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. It'll go back to being that, which is what I wanted to be this week, but Bethesda took up a lot of my time. See you guys next week for another episode of System Update. Or, I guess, in a few days. It's not going to be long.